The most dangerous thing you can do to a system built to feed on your attention is become uninteresting to it. Not defeated, not emotionally collapsed, not disconnected from life, unpredictable, and I do not mean dull in the ordinary sense. I mean difficult to measure, difficult to provoke, invisible to the systems designed to monetize your impulses. A person who no longer constantly craves becomes hard to sell to. A person who no longer reacts automatically becomes hard to steer. A person whose nervous system is no longer permanently overloaded becomes incredibly difficult to influence. This is a pattern Robert Greene has explored for decades through the study of power, influence, and human behavior. Most people interpret withdrawal as weakness. A strategist sees it as selective disengagement. And by the end of this, you will understand the difference. Why a quieter life is not the consolation prize of the uninspired. It can be the ultimate strategic move. But here is the part most people never explain. There is a specific psychological mechanism that makes this work. Without it, simplicity feels like deprivation. Silence feels unbearable. Slowness feels like failure. But with it, you become psychologically difficult to control. We will get there. First, you need to understand how deep the machinery actually reaches. Here's a question that should make you uncomfortable. Why are you exhausted? Not physically. Put that aside for a moment. Emotionally, mentally, internally. Why? Do some mornings begin with heaviness before the day has even started? Why does another ordinary day sometimes feel less like possibility and more like pressure? Most people blame themselves. Weak discipline, poor sleep, lack of purpose. Maybe you've even looked up burnout and quietly recognized yourself in the symptoms. But what if the exhaustion is not a flaw in your character? What if it is the intended outcome? The modern economy no longer depends mainly on physical labor. It depends on attention, emotional energy, reactions, engagement, notifications, manufactured urgency, endless scrolling, suspense-driven entertainment, fear-based headlines. These are not accidental side effects of digital life. They are deliberate design features. You are not simply using these systems. In many ways, they are consuming your focus. And the most unsettling part is how normal this has become. We've been trained to equate stimulation with living, busyness with importance, constant activity with purpose. So people chase endlessly and call it ambition. Meanwhile, many of the people who helped design these systems protect themselves differently. They limit exposure. They seek quiet. They choose slower environments. They build boundaries around attention. That contrast tells you something important. An overstimulated mind is easier to direct, and a mind that is constantly reacting rarely gets the chance to think clearly. In the modern world, Robert Greene could have taken the obvious route. He could have remained comfortably inside the accepted structure, producing what people expected, following the familiar path society labels respectable, chasing recognition, wealth, visibility, and conventional approval the same way everyone else does. Instead, he spent decades doing something far stranger. He became an observer, a student of power, a collector of behavioral patterns. He studied rulers, negotiators, strategists, manipulators, ambitious personalities, social performers, and the hidden mechanics that govern human interaction across history. While most people stayed occupied inside the performance, he focused on understanding the machinery behind it. He was not escaping society. He was examining it, and that is a distinction most people fail to understand. This is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about someone looking at the trajectory everyone automatically accepts and asking a disturbing question. What if much of what we call living is actually a highly polished form of slow self-erasure? What if endless busyness is simply a socially rewarded way of avoiding confrontation with yourself. What if constant activity is not proof of meaning, but evidence of distraction? The strategic mind learns to separate signal from noise, but to hear the signal, subtraction becomes necessary. Most people never subtract. They only add more obligations, more stimulation, more conversations, more updates, more urgency, more digital noise, more emotional clutter. And because they never step back, they never actually see the architecture controlling them. Robert Greene's strength was never simply knowledge. It was distance, the ability to step outside the emotional current long enough to observe the hidden patterns underneath human behavior, to watch ambition without becoming consumed by it, to study influence without becoming hypnotized by appearances, to understand status without becoming addicted to validation. And when someone returns from that kind of observation, they do not come back with comfort. They come back with clarity, with frameworks sharp enough to reshape how people think about power, ambition, manipulation, social behavior, and self-control, quietly, precisely, powerfully. Let's talk about what is actually happening inside your mind. Every time a notification appears, no matter how small or insignificant it seems, your brain reacts. Attention shifts, anticipation rises, reward circuitry activates. These are the same behavioral systems involved in compulsive reinforcement patterns. The same mechanisms researchers have spent decades studying in relation to habit, loops, and repetitive checking behavior. The people designing these systems understand this extremely well. Former insiders have spoken openly about it. Behavioral engineers have written about it. Product designers openly discuss engagement architecture. But here is the detail most people overlook. It is not pleasure alone that keeps you attached. It is unpredictability. A system that rewards you every single time becomes boring. A system that rewards you occasionally becomes compelling. That uncertainty is what keeps the loop alive. This is one of the strongest conditioning mechanisms known in behavioral psychology, and your phone has become a portable version of that system. You check it constantly, often without even realizing why. Sometimes there is something waiting, sometimes there is nothing, but either way the habit strengthens. Now expand that beyond your phone. Social platforms offering irregular validation. News cycles alternating between alarm and relief. Digital communication creating unpredictable bursts of connection. Work systems manufacturing constant urgency. Your nervous system begins adapting to instability as normal. And slowly, without noticing, you become conditioned to reaction. When everything feels stimulating, nothing feels meaningful. When everything feels urgent, nothing gets proper importance. When your mind is permanently occupied by external triggers, you lose the ability to generate your own direction. You stop acting intentionally and begin reacting automatically. And people who live in constant reaction become remarkably easy to influence. Here's a historical parallel that can completely change how you see this. In ancient China, there was a philosopher known as Lao Tzu, often associated with the foundations of Taoist thought. He wrote a compact but remarkably profound text called the Tao Te Ching, a series of short passages that continue influencing strategic thinking. Centuries later, one of its most powerful ideas centers on something deceptively simple. A bowl. What makes a bowl useful? Not the clay itself, not the material forming its outer structure. The usefulness comes from the empty space inside. That hollow space is what gives the object its function. He applies the same logic to rooms, wheels, and life itself. Function often emerges not from what is present, but from what is deliberately absent. This is where strategic thinking becomes uncomfortable. Most people assume power comes through accumulation. More contacts, more obligations, more activity, more options, more stimulation, more visibility. But often the opposite is true. Sometimes leverage comes from subtraction. Sometimes clarity appears only when clutter disappears. This is not aesthetic minimalism. This is not social media decluttering culture. This is not lifestyle branding disguised as wisdom. This is strategic emptiness. When your life becomes overcrowded with obligations, stimulation, noise, emotional reactions, and endless input, your ability to think clearly begins collapsing. You become so occupied responding that you stop initiating, so busy consuming that you stop creating, so invested in appearing productive that you stop producing anything meaningful. A full calendar is not always evidence of progress. Sometimes it is evidence of capture. A chaotic schedule can become a prison people build themselves. While calling it ambition, society often rewards this illusion. If someone is always busy, we assume importance. If someone never slows down, we assume significance. But busyness is often a sophisticated escape mechanism, because beneath all that activity sits a terrifying question most people never want to face. What would I actually do if nothing external demanded my attention? Most people do not know, and that uncertainty unsettles them enough to keep filling every available moment, rather than confront it. Here's a concept most people are never taught, and it may be one of the most valuable psychological skills you can develop: boredom tolerance. In the 1970s, psychologist Walter Mischel conducted what became one of the most widely discussed behavioral experiments in psychology, the marshmallow test. Children were given a simple choice: one reward immediately, or a larger reward if they waited 15 minutes. Over time, researchers observed patterns connecting delayed gratification with stronger long-term outcomes across multiple areas of life: academic performance, emotional regulation, relationships, and future stability. For years, people interpreted this as a lesson about self-control, but the deeper insight is more interesting. Many of the children who waited did not simply force themselves to suffer through discomfort. They changed their relationship with waiting itself. They distracted themselves, sang quietly, invented stories, redirected attention. They made stillness psychologically manageable. That changes everything, because this is not just about resisting temptation. It is about transforming your relationship with discomfort. Most adults never learn this skill. The moment silence appears, they reach for stimulation. The moment boredom appears, they seek interruption. The moment stillness appears, they interpret it as emptiness. But strategic minds understand something different. Boredom is not always absence. Sometimes it is recovery. Sometimes it is recalibration. Sometimes it is where perception sharpens again. Robert Greene's long years of deep study reflect this exact principle. He did not build insight through endless distraction. He built it through prolonged observation, patience, pattern recognition, and the ability to remain mentally present, where others would immediately seek stimulation. That is what makes boredom tolerance dangerous in the best possible sense. Because the person who can sit inside discomfort without compulsively escaping it becomes much harder to control. Most people are not reacting to reality. They are reacting to their inability to tolerate silence. And those are very different things. The people who build real depth do something most others avoid. They simplify entire categories of life that do not serve the central objective. They identify what actually matters, what deserves attention, what aligns with the deeper mission, and they begin cutting away everything else. Not someday, not gradually through endless negotiation. Deliberately. This is uncomfortable because modern culture glorifies optionality. Keeping choices open is presented as wisdom. Flexibility is praised as intelligence. But there is a darker side people rarely discuss. Optionality can become avoidance disguised as sophistication. When every door remains open, no meaningful door gets walked through completely. You remain in the hallway, admiring your freedom while never building anything substantial inside a single room. Commitment changes that. Commitment creates depth. Depth creates expertise. Expertise creates leverage, and leverage creates independence. Most people never reach that stage because possibility feels emotionally safer than execution. As long as a decision remains theoretical, there is no risk of failure, no irreversible consequence, no confrontation with uncertainty. But that safety has a hidden price. A person who endlessly preserves options often sacrifices momentum, identity, and mastery. Strategic thinkers understand that clarity comes not from endless flexibility, but from choosing a direction and becoming increasingly difficult to pull away from it. The world often celebrates adaptability, but many forms of adaptation are simply disguised indecision. There comes a point where flexibility stops being intelligence and starts becoming fear. Real progress demands the discomfort of commitment. What makes certain people psychologically formidable is not intelligence alone, not education, not charisma. Often it is refusal. The refusal to be overly impressed by appearances, the refusal to be rushed into decisions, the refusal to let self-worth be defined entirely by productivity, possessions, or external recognition. Throughout history, the people who became difficult to control often shared this exact trait. They quietly refused assumptions everyone else accepted without examination. There is an old observation that many people live lives of quiet desperation. The important detail is the wording, not that it happens to them, that they lead those lives. Active choice, even if unconscious. Daily repetition, automatic participation, which means much of the pressure people feel is not always externally imposed. Sometimes it is maintained internally through habits, assumptions, and unchallenged patterns. Modern life adds another complication: excessive optionality. People are taught that more options automatically mean more freedom. But psychologically, too many open loops often create paralysis rather than empowerment. And the hidden cost is enormous. Every unresolved possibility occupies mental space. Every maybe later, every I'll keep that open, every decision deferred without intention creates background cognitive load. It quietly drains attention. High performers understand part of this instinctively. That is why many reduce trivial decisions wherever possible. Simplify repetitive choices. Preserve energy for higher value thinking. But deeper strategic thinking goes further. It does not merely reduce small decisions. It eliminates entire categories of unnecessary friction. Because clarity is not created only by adding better habits. Sometimes it is created by removing competing noise. The uncomfortable truth is that optionality can become a sophisticated form of avoidance. Keeping every door open feels intelligent, but often it simply prevents commitment. And without commitment, depth never develops. The people who build real depth do something most others avoid. They simplify entire categories of life that do not serve the central objective. They identify what actually matters, what deserves attention, what aligns with the deeper mission, and they begin cutting away everything else. Not someday, not gradually through endless negotiation. Deliberately, this is uncomfortable because modern culture glorifies optionality. Keeping choices open is presented as wisdom. Flexibility is praised as intelligence. But there is a darker side people rarely discuss. Optionality can become avoidance disguised as sophistication. When every door remains open, no meaningful door gets walked through completely. You remain in the hallway, admiring your freedom while never building anything substantial inside a single room. Commitment changes that. Commitment creates depth. Depth creates expertise. Expertise creates leverage, and leverage creates independence. Most people never reach that stage because possibility feels emotionally safer than execution. As long as a decision remains theoretical, there is no risk of failure, no irreversible consequence, no confrontation with uncertainty. But that safety has a hidden price. A person who endlessly preserves options often sacrifices momentum, identity, and mastery. Strategic thinkers understand that clarity comes not from endless flexibility, but from choosing a direction and becoming increasingly difficult to pull away from it. The world often celebrates adaptability, but many forms of adaptation are simply disguised indecision. There comes a point where flexibility stops being intelligence and starts becoming fear. Real progress demands the discomfort of commitment. Here is a principle that reveals the actual price of modern ambition. The real cost of something is rarely the money attached to it. The deeper cost is the portion of your life required to maintain it. Every possession, every social symbol, every lifestyle upgrade, every obligation tied to status creates hidden pressure points. The more your identity becomes dependent on expensive comforts, endless stimulation, public validation, and external recognition, the easier it becomes for circumstances to control your decisions. Think carefully about the things you are chasing. That larger house requiring longer working hours, that promotion demanding more stress, less freedom and greater emotional exhaustion, that lifestyle upgrade that quietly increases dependence instead of independence. On paper, it looks like progress. Psychologically, it can become entanglement. This is the uncomfortable question most people avoid because the answer destabilizes the entire script they have been following. Is what you are gaining actually worth the portion of life you are exchanging for it? Because many people are not purchasing convenience. They are purchasing obligation, not buying freedom, but financing dependence. And once dependence enters the equation, leverage follows. The person who needs constant validation becomes easier to steer. The person who requires expensive routines becomes easier to pressure. The person who defines worth externally becomes easier to destabilize. But the person who needs less becomes structurally harder to influence. The one who can walk away from unnecessary dependencies becomes psychologically stronger than the one endlessly accumulating them. That is why simplicity, when chosen deliberately, is not deprivation. It is leverage disguised as restraint. There is a neurological reality here that carries serious implications. Your mind operates in different modes, and most people only respect one of them. There is the focused mode, the state associated with active concentration, problem-solving, deliberate learning, structured analysis, and direct attention. Then there is the default mode, the state your brain enters when attention is not locked onto a specific task. Daydreaming, reflective wandering, quiet observation, unstructured mental drift. Modern productivity culture treats this second state as waste. Every idle moment must be filled. Audio in the car, content during the walk, notifications while waiting, constant informational input. The assumption is that uninterrupted stimulation equals efficiency. But neuroscience suggests something much more interesting. Some of the most meaningful creative insights emerge precisely when focused attention relaxes. When the mind wanders, it begins connecting distant ideas, synthesizing patterns, generating unexpected associations that rigid concentration often cannot produce. History repeatedly reflects this pattern. Newton in reflective pause, Archimedes in sudden realization, Darwin during long walks, Einstein during extended thought exploration. These breakthroughs did not emerge from frantic stimulation. They emerged from spacious thinking. Boredom is not the opposite of productivity. In many cases, it is the environment that makes deeper productivity possible. A person who cannot sit still without external input becomes dependent on consumption. A person who can remain present in silence develops access to something rarer: original thought, strategic clarity, internal synthesis. Most people avoid this space because silence initially feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is often the doorway, not the warning sign. There is a psychological pattern that explains far more of modern behavior than most people realize. It is called hedonic adaptation. The principle is simple but deeply unsettling. Whatever level of stimulation you become used to gradually becomes normal. What once felt exciting becomes ordinary. What once felt extraordinary becomes expected. This is why major external upgrades rarely produce lasting satisfaction. The excitement fades. The novelty dissolves. The extraordinary quietly becomes baseline. But there is a darker implication people rarely confront. This process works in both directions. If you continuously increase stimulation, more drama, more urgency, more emotional intensity, more digital overload, your threshold for feeling anything meaningful keeps rising. You do not become more alive. You become less sensitive, more dependent on stronger signals just to feel engaged. This helps explain why some people become attached to chaos even while claiming they want peace. Why increasingly extreme content becomes normalized. Why emotional turbulence begins to feel familiar instead of exhausting. The nervous system adapts to instability until calm itself feels unnatural. That is the trap. The strategic reversal is equally powerful. Reduce unnecessary stimulation and sensitivity begins returning. Ordinary moments recover depth. Silence stops feeling threatening. Simplicity becomes emotionally visible again. The goal is not to withdraw from life, but to stop requiring exaggerated stimulation in order to experience it. Many people mistake overstimulation for aliveness. In reality, overstimulation often creates numbness disguised as engagement. And once numbness becomes normal, genuine clarity becomes difficult to access. What makes this idea so often misunderstood is how harmless people try to make it sound. They reduce it into lifestyle aesthetics, soft productivity advice, or another trend about simplifying your environment. But the deeper message is far less comfortable than that. This is not merely about organizing your surroundings or creating a cleaner routine. It is about strategic separation from systems that quietly consume your attention, shape your behavior, and influence your priorities without your awareness. Much of what modern society rewards can function as sophisticated distraction. Much of what gets celebrated as success can become dependence wearing better clothes. Much of what passes as living can become endless preparation without genuine arrival. That is what makes this diagnosis unsettling. If someone appears out of rhythm with the people around them, the immediate assumption is often dysfunction. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if moving differently does not always indicate confusion? What if it sometimes reflects perception? A person who notices hidden incentives, emotional manipulation, or social conditioning will naturally appear unusual to those fully immersed inside those systems. Strategic awareness often looks strange from the outside because most people are still reacting to surfaces rather than structures. The person who sees beneath appearances becomes difficult to categorize, and what society cannot easily categorize, it often dismisses. But dismissal is not disproof. Sometimes the uncomfortable observer is not lost. Sometimes they are simply seeing something others have not yet noticed. So where does this leave you? I am not going to reduce this into a neat three-step formula because some lessons lose their power the moment they are simplified into checklists. Instead, I want to leave you with a question, one that deserves more than a passing thought. Sit with it properly, not for a few seconds, but for as long as it takes to feel uncomfortable. What would actually remain if you removed everything in your life that exists because of habit, fear, imitation, obligation, or social expectation? Not what should remain according to your family, not what would appear impressive to other people, not what your environment has trained you to preserve. What would remain if every role, routine, behavior, and commitment that does not genuinely belong to you disappeared? Because whatever survives that, subtraction is probably closer to your real life than the noise surrounding it now. Most people never get there, not because the answer is unavailable, but because distraction is easier than confrontation. Busyness feels safer than self-examination. Endless movement feels more comfortable than silence. So people spend years in motion without ever entering the room where clarity actually lives. They remain in the hallway of reaction, mistaking movement for progress. But the moment someone begins stripping away what is unnecessary, something different happens. Space appears, and in that space, a more honest version of life begins becoming visible. There is a concept in military strategy known as strategic retreat. It does not mean surrender. It does not mean collapse. It means deliberate withdrawal for advantage. An army pulls back not because it has lost, but because it understands terrain, timing, resource conservation, and the psychology of overextension. It allows the opposing force to exhaust itself chasing illusions while strength is quietly consolidated elsewhere. That distinction matters because many people misunderstand withdrawal in exactly the same way. Stepping back from constant stimulation, endless social expectations, reactive environments, and systems designed to drain attention is often mistaken for weakness. But in reality, selective withdrawal can be one of the most intelligent strategic moves a person makes. Refusing to fight on terms chosen by systems that profit from your exhaustion is not failure. It is discipline. Pulling away from that constantly fragment your attention is not avoidance. It is resource protection. Simplifying life is not abandoning ambition. It is refining ambition into something more intentional. The loud world often celebrates environments, perpetual motion, but movement without direction is not strength. Strategic retreat creates distance, and distance creates perspective. Perspective creates clarity, and clarity changes the quality of every decision that follows. A quieter life is not automatically a smaller life. Sometimes it is the first time a person begins living according to their own priorities instead of inherited ones. That is not surrender. That is repositioning. Here is the uncomfortable truth this has been moving toward from the beginning. You already know some version of this. The part of you that clicked on this, the part that has stayed here through every idea, every uncomfortable question, every layer being peeled back, already recognizes something. You have felt the exhaustion of endless motion, the emptiness of overcrowded schedules, the strange hunger that remains even after achievement, stimulation, distraction, or progress. That recognition matters, but recognition alone changes nothing. Knowing and acting are entirely different territories, and most people spend years living in the gap between them. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they are incapable, but because acting requires something. Knowledge does not automatically provide courage, clarity, discipline, the willingness to disappoint expectations, the willingness to be misunderstood, the willingness to look unremarkable to people addicted to performance. Simplicity is not difficult because it is inherently painful. It is difficult because it removes excuses. It strips away distractions. It forces confrontation with what actually matters. And many people would rather remain overwhelmed than face that confrontation honestly. To move differently means accepting that some people will misread you. Some will call restraint boring. Some will interpret boundaries as coldness. Some will assume reduced participation means failure, but perception is not reality. If you're different, if that part of you that's been listening actually wants to act, then subscribe.